Welcome back to Vibes Only. This week, we're talking inflation numbers, billionaire IPOs, and the staggering costs around the World Cup.
Also, Spencer Pratt lost in Los Angeles. The Bidens are getting back on the shelves, and Hunter Biden is back online. I am thriving.
I am not. We're probably going to fight about it. And Iowa Senate candidate Josh Turek is our Oath Candidate of the Week. Let's get into it.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Glennis. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Are you feeling a little warm today?
No. Are you?
I'm feeling hot because the economy is literally on fire. We just got new inflation numbers that we actually must talk about.
Okay. I thought you were going to ask me about the World Cup or if I'm hot and excited because that starts on Thursday, day of Vibes Only, first game.
We can get into all of that. And Knicks in 6?
Knicks in 5, but okay.
It doesn't rhyme. I need someone to come up with some reason for it to be Knicks in 5. Otherwise, Knicks in 6 just sounds better.
I saw someone say Trump killed the vibe, Knicks in 5.
Oh, okay. I'm here for that. That's solid. We just got a bombshell new report in moments before we started recording that I feel the need to lead this episode with.
I'm nervous. I haven't seen the news.
We just got new inflation numbers in. What it shows is that Trump has trashed the economy, which we knew, but this data is pretty shocking, to be honest. Inflation has now spiked 75% since Biden. So at the end of Biden's term, inflation was at 2.4%, just above the target where it's always supposed to be around 2%.
Okay.
It is now at 4.2%. So we're approaching double what it was at the end of Biden's term. That is a direct result of Trump starting a war with no plan, no strategy, no end goals, really just military adventurism that has now thrashed the world economy.
Right.
In addition to the tariffs and other horrendous policies that he implemented in his first year.
And I would say as a direct result of Trump genuinely not giving a shit about the economic stability of the American people. He's said it. He also has been leeching the United States economy and capitalism for his own personal net worth gain. So I'm not surprised, and I do not think he cares at all.
At all. And you're exactly right. Like, that is the message and why I think it's so important for Democrats to be focused there before any and everything else. There are so many outrageous things that he does and says. We talk about it a lot. The UFC fight, the reflecting pool, the weaponization fund, all of these things, but bringing it always back to you are worse off. You cannot afford anything. You can't pay for rent, housing, food, a vacation, savings, college, your kids, childcare, healthcare. You cannot pay for anything. Trump is 10xing his family wealth. What more do you need to know than that, right? So much of the other stuff falls away for me when you really hit that message home.
Yeah. Did you see, you're making me think of this headline. I was walking back from coffee and I saw the headline, and as a millennial, I was just like, water off a duck's back, but it was Social Security will be insolvent by 2032. Let me double check.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I got nervous because I realized 2032 is not that far away.
No, we're never going to see that.
Yeah.
We are never going to see that.
It's just more people, I think, need to be talking about that. Look at your paycheck. Look at how much comes out. And the three main reasons why this is the case is, one, because of the big brutal bill, the 2017 tax cuts. If you're over, I think it's 60, you're not taxed on your Social Security anymore, which for boomers is a great thing. But then for people like us, it means that we're not going to get that. And least of which is all of the immigration, right? People are not coming. We're deporting people, and undocumented immigrants, they contribute about $26 billion a year to Social Security.
Right. I mean, shrinking the economy, shrinking the population while cutting the tax base and handing away the cash that we do have to either billionaires or defense contractors or both is a recipe for fucking over millennials and the middle class generally, Gen Z, Gen X included. That is why this is so important. It's important that we talk about it now. It's important that we highlight it for the
Mhm.
midterms and tell people what's going on. But also, this is a turning point for the Democratic Party, and we have to make it a turning point for the Democratic
I
Party.
agree.
The brand of the party has been defined for the last 10 years by social justice issues around
Mm.
women's rights, LGBT equality, and racial justice, and all of these things that are so critical and are a potentially frivolous pursuit without basic economic justice, without basic policy that can meet the basic needs of everyone. Let me say basic 5 more times. It is about getting back to basics, like in many ways. And
Ooh,
rather
there's
than
the
craft
slogan.
back to basics,
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of true. And I am very set on Democrats learning this lesson, not for 2026, but for the next 20 years,
Yeah,
that
no, for
this is
sure.
what people want to see and hear and talk about day in and day out is how do I make everyone's lives better every day
Yeah.
more than singling out individual or niche policies for specific communities.
Yeah, it's a yes and. We should be able to do both. And right now, Democrats haven't effectively been able to communicate that they do have the vision, the policy, and the means to do that. I'm with you. Graham Platner, of course. I
Oh,
think, he won his primary. We'll go to the general, which I'm sure we'll be saying in 3 months' time is now, maybe it will surpass Texas as like the most expensive primary. Like, I don't know, but there's just so much money flowing into Maine. This is a conversation that's ongoing in the Democratic Party. I think people thought that he was like the golden ticket, that he was the kind of candidate we wanted to see, and we're seeing that, well, actually, maybe the consultants who picked him out of a lineup over index for the white male problem. So I think it's an ongoing conversation of what kind of candidates we have as well. Um, but yeah, let's see, and let's keep talking about it here because it's a hill I'll die on. If I don't get that Social Security.
yeah, Plattner won his race. I thought about it a lot since our conversation
Yeah.
last week. It's something that I have talked to friends about and went and read more about and got takes from people that I respect, content creators. For me, where I'm at right now is in keeping with this line of thinking around how do you make the lives better of the vast
Mhm.
majority of people in the country. The race comes down to which person is going to vote to make everyone's lives better, period.
Yeah.
The end. Do I think that we need better candidates? Yes. Do I
Yeah.
wish that someone else were the candidate in Maine? Sure. And I will personally have no qualms about telling people to go out and vote for Plattner, knowing that at the end of the day, someone's going to sit in that seat and they're
Mhm.
either going to vote for billionaires or they're going to vote for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And I think that the moral necessity of that question outweighs personal considerations around the
His character.
yeah, right, exactly.
I've stated this as well. I'm with you. And I think that it's helpful. And I think people should continue to have dialogue around him as a candidate, but then also talk about that reality of who's going to be protecting working people versus billionaires in the state of Maine and at the federal level. So onwards.
Yeah, and I will also just acknowledge before we move on that I say that as a man, like,
Yeah.
and that this in this context, like, he's very much accused of being an abuser of or harasser of or mistreating women.
Yeah.
And so I've tried and think about like, oh, what if it was somebody who like was repeatedly calling people faggot and
Well, he might have done that, but
I
that's
mean,
okay.
totally. Right, right,
Yeah.
right. And so I'm trying to make it like more personal. Like, how would I feel in that
Yeah.
situation? And ultimately, if I genuinely believe that the person would vote for the Equality Act, I would line up to vote for them.
Thank you for saying that. And I do think that that's helpful to model for more men in the space to put themselves in the situation of women, Black women, if they can, of just like, what is the reality of that experience to as much as you can like think about it. We're aligned. It is what it is. We can only continue, especially as operatives in the space and strategists, to pressure those making those decisions of like, why don't we double check the vetting?
I
That's a
mean,
conversation for another day. Like,
it is.
what?
It is. We can, if we're going there, I have to get into Mills, so we can't even talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Speaking of billionaires, Brian, the news on all these IPOs. You brought this up last week, and I still don't really have I don't understand how consequential it's going to be to the economy, but I know it's gross. I know that it's a lot of money, and the worst person in the world is trying to become a trillionaire, Elon Musk.
It's kind of weird to know that you're the worst person in the world. You
He
know what I
doesn't care.
mean?
He's a
Like,
literal supervillain.
he is. That's
Like,
true.
his origin story is supervillain. His attitude, the way he treats his family and his children, his worldview is villainous. His speciesism is bizarre. Like, he's weird.
We are at a weird moment on the precipice of something when it comes to these AI supergiants. The market, the stock market, has been dropping. Some of the biggest drops in the last few days that we've seen all year, maybe even longer than that. I think it's down 3% just in the last handful of days. That's mostly because AI companies are underperforming and not hitting the marks of what people are expecting. And that's coming right as they're about to IPO. It does feel precarious. I will point to just how quickly I think the economy could take a dive given the inflation numbers that we were just talking about. And if the companies that are currently seen as propping up the entire stock market, because over 70% of the growth in the stock market has come from just 5 or 6 companies, the rest are not doing well. We could actually see a tailspin enacted pretty quick. At the same time, we have this conversation boiling over, weirdly, that Donald Trump has made mainstream of should the government own big chunks of really successful companies in America? Donald Trump started this when he started forcing companies to hand over a stake in their company to the government. We talked about this last year
Yeah.
as Trump socialism. And now Bernie Sanders has put forth a proposal for AI companies to pay 50% of their stock over to the public.
Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit more because a huge part of the SpaceX IPO is that the AI element of Elon's universe lives within SpaceX. And I heard the news that Bernie was like 50% of AI companies should be owned by the American public or the government. And then I don't have the exact numbers, and I would like to actually look all this up and maybe talk about it at a later date. But when you think about how much these companies have received in government contracts, which are paid with our taxpayer dollars, it feels very gross to me. I don't know like if corrupt is the right word here, but it definitely feels like it's not serving the basic interest, to your point, of the American people to have our taxpayer dollars be funneling into these private companies to then personally enrich these people.
I think that it is the finances, the amount of taxpayer money and services that have gone to propping them up, but it's also the IP that we have to remember that these models were
Mm-hmm.
trained on the collective knowledge
Mm.
of everyone. And a lot of individual
Yeah.
IP, personal IP was violated in that happening. That's why you see payouts happening from AI companies, settlements happening from authors and artists and things who have
Mhm.
been suing because they fed their work into this model without permission. Just the collective knowledge. That's why Bernie has started to refer to AI as a public utility,
Mm.
which is an interesting framing of it as we think about what the AI of the future looks like in the most, let's say, optimistic or
Right.
highest adoption scenarios. I think that's kind of right. Will you be able to, in the future, function and have a successful and fulfilling life without interacting with the AI at all? I don't know. Like just comparing it to the internet, right? It's sort of a internet is kind of to the point that it's a necessity in America.
To that point, like if you look back at the Inflation Reduction Act, I believe, where installing broadband was a huge part of that, right? Because
Right.
a lot of rural America did not have fast wired internet. I'm just confirming or validating your point that
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Right. And so we do think about the internet as like a public utility.
utility, yeah.
And in that sense, AI could very much follow the same path. I think there's a case to be made that the government and the American public should have a stake in these companies, and maybe that's a way to address the runaway
Yep.
inequality that is
Yeah.
only being accelerated by 5 companies buying basically everything else that, like,
And
left.
5 people getting,
R
you
right.
know, and of course hundreds of employees as well, but I don't think this is a radical idea at all. At all. I'm like, yeah, we should show me the money, like, especially when you look at the numbers around everything that's being cut with the Medicaid, the SNAP, the Social Security disappearing. What do you mean we're going to enrich these companies that, to your point, are using our individual IP that we fed into the internet, or PhDs have written in papers, or that reporters have written for hundreds and hundreds of years, or medical journals have published around research that is being defunded by the government? It's just not a radical thought.
And this is the horseshoe, right?
Mhm.
This is where the left-right axis of politics bends into being
Yeah.
a horseshoe, because Trump agrees
Mhm.
with Bernie that there is something to this. And I literally did an interview last night on Sirius, and reporters all the time are always asking about this political realignment that's happening, where left versus center is not really the defining fight. We've talked about this. It's more about fight versus flight, or like
Mhm.
a strategy and generational question and divide. I think that old school Dems will be very skittish about ideas like this. Most of the gubernatorial candidates for president in 2028 are going to run away from any type of policy like this. But I
Why?
think, oh, because they are old school capitalist thinkers
Oh,
that
like, you gotta pull yourself up from your bootstraps and work the American
kinda,
way, and
kinda.
the
I think
system is
that
rigged against Americans, period.
totally, right, exactly, and I think that that thinking being a commonality between the far left, using air
Mhm.
quotes, and the center
Mhm.
is what has shifted the paradigm. Because we can find people who agree with that exact sentiment that you just said across the political spectrum.
Yeah.
That is sort of the thing that links everybody together now, is that people think that it's broken. And as we've talked about, old school Dems, establishment Dems, what the internet would call corporatist Dems, have become defenders of that system, either
Yeah.
wittingly or unwittingly. And that feels like the thing that's going to break in 2028.
Yeah, and just to your earlier point on economic issues versus social issues, and that spectrum of Americans who believe that the system is rigged, the right side of that, or some of the far right, are also homophobic, racist, misogynist, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, right? So it's like,
100%.
I wanna see my candidate talking about this. It's the corruption is abound, and, like, the self-enriching and the elected selling out to corporate interests is very, very, very real. When was the last time you used AI?
15 minutes ago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
every 15 minutes max every day. Like,
Mhm.
I'm very deep.
Mhm.
Aren't you?
I'm pilled, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay, the one thing that I just wanna point out in what you just said that I think
Mhm.
matters is that there are all these people who are motivated by that economic message, that they believe the system is rigged and they want someone who's willing to take that on. And there a lot of those people are essentially forced to, or end up voting for racist, misogynistic, homophobic people, because they are the only ones, or have
Mhm.
been the only ones, presenting a path and a vehicle for that fight, for that message, because Democrats have left that lane open
Mhm.
by focusing on other things, or by not having a compelling enough message on that issue. They were able to capture that lane. And so what I feel like is happening now is Democrats are recapturing the inequality, economic, and general middle class well-being sort of. I mean, it's not even that. It's this, like, basic fairness, achievable American dream lane that can pull people away from and divest power from those racists and misogynists and homophobes. Our strategy, it seems, for the last few years has mostly been directly taking that on, calling out the X-ism instead of proposing an alternative economic path that can pull people away from them. We have to pull their audience away from them. That's how you take away their power.
Yeah, just to close this loop, the dichotomy that we see with Graham Platner is that he has shown himself to be a very effective communicator in that way around these economic issues, around class consciousness, around the inequality in America. And the dialogue is just, he also has some of that other stuff too. So,
Right.
so I want to keep us on the billionaire track for a second. Because I saw a stat that was kind of crazy about FIFA.
Oh.
They're suspected to make $11 billion from the World Cup.
Woo! That's a payday.
Mamma mia. But it's tough, right? Because I'm so excited. We both love soccer, football. I don't know if the fans know that. The World Cup brings so much joy and energy to the world and fandom and excitement. And it's just like massive eye roll, FIFA. Like, and for those who don't know, the World Cup is longer and there are more teams this year, essentially for the sole purpose of making more money around the
Cash
games.
grab.
Yeah, my TikTok For You page has completely been overtaken by tourists in America for the World Cup, and it is bringing me so much joy. It is so funny. There was an Argentina game yesterday at an SEC stadium, and all these tourists were like, oh my God, this is just like a college football stadium, like losing. And they had the eagle fly out. And then there's this whole big thing about, it's hot in America and people don't realize like how hot it is.
Beep, 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 beep,
And
beep, beep, beep. Breaking news. You heard it here first. It is
right.
fucking hot in the summer in America.
Yeah, and like the Swedish team is in Frisco, Texas, right? And they're like dying, and it's just like it's bringing Americans together around like the collective misery of humidity in the United States of America, and everyone's like, now you know why we all have water bottles and we love
Right.
ice. Just this morning, it was so funny. I don't know what country they were from, but they were Spanish speaking. They were at Quincy Market in Boston, and they were having a lobster roll, and they were explaining it. And they also got a cup of New England clam chowder, which is a thick soup. They thought it was like a dipping sauce for the lobster roll. But anyway, I hold like these two things where it's like FIFA is like hyperbolically corrupt. Like everyone knows that. And that they also like to be friendly with fascists. That's what the organization has kind of done forever. It is tough to see how much money they're making off of working people who are paying for the tickets, off of New Yorkers who are having to take a $200 train just to get to MetLife. And then you also see these really horrific headlines about one of most respected referees from Somalia was sent back, or the Iranian national team has to fly in and out because they aren't allowed to be in the United States. It's an interesting time.
Yeah, the World Cup for the rest of the world is like the Knicks in the finals in New York. Glennis is literally in her New York Knicks shirt right now. Knicks in 4.
We lost. But
Oh yeah, whatever. Basketball's not my thing. Sorry,
you're like
guys.
sports. Yeah.
Yeah, give me European football, soccer. It's an extremely uniting cultural event for most of the world. It's sad to me that it doesn't quite have the same pull in the States because we have other sports that are more popular. The economics of it are bananas. As you're saying, FIFA is going to make 11 billy, and New York and New Jersey, who are hosting the finals, are footing the bill for security and transportation, for all of the like infrastructure that has to be set up and managed. That's the part that is shitty. And Mikey Sherrill has been fighting that fight that she inherited from her predecessor as the governor of New Jersey.
Yeah. New York City taxpayers, I hate to break it to you, Brian, 90 million we're spending on the World Cup. It's going to leave us 40 million in the hole.
It's just crazy that like FIFA wouldn't be paying some of that.
That's my thing. FIFA's getting $11 billion and we're paying?
Right,
I guess the assumption is like, oh, all of this tourism's going to bring so much money to the city of New York, but I don't think
not
it's going to
me.
Yeah, not to my pocket.
Not to me. Am I supposed to like put a bucket out on the street and be like, okay, tourists, here's your tax. You saw me in person, so you got to pay up $5 each. It may be feels different for other host countries who typically get seats and tickets set aside for them, which
Yeah.
we didn't until Mamdani renegotiated the deal. I don't think that Americans are like hyped that we're hosting.
Who are you cheering for?
I mean, the US, obviously.
But our men are.
Probably. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. I haven't like spent time looking at the um rosters. My guess is that I'm gonna be most excited about the UK, England. Just because most of my favorite teams and players are there. I follow EPL more.
But
Who are
aren't you
you?
a Spurs fan?
I am.
Mm. Well, definitely not England as someone who has Irish heritage. Thank you very much. I don't know. I'm kind of like open. Like, I just enjoy watching the players that I love to watch. So, obviously, like Spain and France are always fun. We'll see. We'll see what the playoffs, LOL, the round of 16 look like. Let's talk about Republicans. Brian, you said to me that Republicans are in disarray. I have to be real. It's hard for me to keep up with what's going on in Capitol Hill. Period.
Yes, as it's meant to be, basically.
Yeah, as someone who used to work there and works in the space, I feel like they're just not doing anything. Except I
Correct.
did see they did get the immigration bill through yesterday.
Yes.
What do I need to
Okay.
know?
There's a few really big pieces of legislation that are just log jammed in Congress, for the most part, not because Democrats are blocking them, although that's true with some, but also just because Republicans can't agree on anything, that they've elected all these crazy extremists who want to push things beyond the Overton window, like as far as possible. And then they also have moderates who are trying to avoid horrible votes so that they can save their own skin in November. They're not on the same page, especially between the Senate and the House. So it's hard for them to even put proposals forward, which is why this has been the least productive Congress we've had in decades. Trump will be the first president without any major legislative achievement outside of reconciliation, whereas Biden had a bunch, like the Chips and Science Act, Obama, you think of Obamacare, but Trump couldn't do anything because Republicans can't agree on anything, nor are they willing to negotiate with Dems on more basics. So the pieces of legislation that you need to know. One, you just referenced reconciliation bill, which was $75 billion of ICE and CBP funding, passed the Senate, passed the House, going to be signed by Trump by the time people hear this.
And you brought this up a couple weeks ago. This was always the plan. So when we shut down the government, we didn't really get what we needed. We got dialogue, we got public attention, but you called this out and you said they're just inflating it with more and more money.
Right. So
For
Democrats had
ICE.
said no more money for ICE. They had already put a bunch of money in through the One Big Beautiful Bill, the first reconciliation bill that Trump did. ICE was already funded. So nothing that we did was going to actually stop them from functioning. They wanted more money for ICE. Dem said, no, we won't supply any votes for that. So therefore, Republicans went at it alone, as we would say, and passed it through reconciliation, which is a process that requires no Democratic votes because it only needs a simple majority in the Senate. So we didn't get what we wanted out of that, which was originally the mask ban, cameras, and more accountability and oversight for ICE.
Yeah.
But what we did was eat up a bunch more time. It has taken them months to pass that second reconciliation bill. We had the whole debacle over the weaponization fund, which has, they say, been like canceled or paused, but nothing in this bill prohibits Trump from actually pursuing it.
Doing it anyway.
Once he signs it, we might hear differently. There's nothing to stop him from doing that. Second is the FISA bill. This is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. This is how the intelligence services spy on basically everyone outside of the United States. And it has been reauthorized every single time it's come up since it was signed into law. And this is the first time that it looks like it might actually lapse because President Trump appointed Bill Pulte to replace Tulsi Gabbard as the head of DNI, Director of National Intelligence. Democrats are like, no, 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 you can't put a Nepo baby with zero national security expertise or experience in charge of the entire national security apparatus of the country. Yeah. We're not going to give him the power that FISA authorizes So we're not supplying votes for FISA as long as you have this literally know nothing Nepo baby in charge. You have to get a real person in charge for us to do this. And so it might
Right.
actually expire on Friday of this week.
Yeah, because it's essentially just putting a Trump loyalist to spy on internationals, or can they also spy on American people abroad?
I think that it is restricted. That's part of the negotiation, I believe. And then there's the third reconciliation bill where Republicans are saying that they're going to do another Republicans only bill. It's through that process that they want to get this $1.5 trillion in
Military?
military spending because Dems thus far are saying they will not go along with a 50% increase in the military budget. And so that looks like it's falling apart as well, and they might end up being forced to vote on a continuing resolution, what's known as a CR, which would simply continue last year's budget levels, which is roughly 890 billion
Yeah.
for defense, which would be a huge win for Dems to
Yeah.
avoid spending an extra $500 billion on audit list defense contractors.
Isn't that crazy? Like that,
Psychotic.
talking about billionaires, when you look at how much of that budget just gets funneled out into these security contractors or defense contractors, it's truly mind-boggling. Like New York City taxpayers and how much our tax money, when we send it to the feds, that you, Brian Derrick, pay directly to defense contractors through the current military budget.
Don't tell me.
It's $2,000
A year.
a year. And you're sending that straight to,
Raytheon,
Raytheon. It's crazy.
Palantir.
Palantir. Oh, I know. I wear my Aura ring. I'm always like, "Good morning, Palantir." Like, I'm putting it on because they're like tracking my data. I'm like, okay, you're gonna see that my activity level's at a 70. Okay, like, what are you gonna start like shocking Americans? Anyway, that chaps my
Anyway,
ass. It's like when you actually, this is what I use AI for. Actually, to talk about AI is I do deep research and I pull IRS filings because you, as a human, I will say like that would be 30 hours of work. I don't even really
yeah.
know like where to start with that. The more I lift the hood up as to like where my taxpayer dollars are actually going, because I own a business in New York City. I'm a consultant and I work in New York City, so I pay tax to the city, as you may as well. I'm kind of obsessed with understanding where my taxpayer dollars go. I'm okay paying tax. That is our duty as American people. I believe in helping my neighbors and creating social services for people. But when I see where my money is going, and it's not to Snap, it's not to WIC, it's not to any of these things, because the Trump administration is defunding everything left and right and trying to raise the military budget to $1.5 trillion. For what? To go keep bombing Iran?
Quite literally, yes. I like that as a use case for AI. Meanwhile, I'm like, if I were a cartoon character, what would the
You're like,
theme
my
song be?
macros. My macros today. I will say I downloaded like a food tracker app because I think I told you I recently got into macros, and the AI really has come far.
Crazy. It's
It's crazy. Like,
crazy.
I'll just like take a photo of the food and it can tell me the macros because I'm
It
lazy, right?
knows.
Like I don't want to weigh my food. There's a lot of dialogue and left circles about AI and like the guardrails that need to be put on AI in terms of like water, the environmental impact. I don't have the answers yet, but I will say, even if you say that you don't use AI is using you. It isn't
Oh!
everything that you do at this point. Brian, you
Glennis.
had some opinions about something, and that is the Biden rollout of these books. So for those
I
who don't know, what?
I mean, just the Biden family in general. What the fuck is going on?
It doesn't bother me. You know what I'm more concerned about? Jared and Ivanka saying they're going to buy an island that's Albanian, a part of the country of Albania. Like, talk about colonialism. Hit me. What's going on?
Well, they're all over the place. Jill Biden gave some bananas interviews saying that she thought that Biden was having a stroke during the debate. And then immediately after that said that he would have won if he had been on the ticket in 24. And I'm like, what? Just all press for her book that no one asked for. Then you have Hunter Biden, who's made a appearance on Twitter and the MAGA podcast circuit is kicking off with this 2-hour interview with Candace Owens. He's been having very interesting interactions with people going super viral around that. And then we have Joe Biden, who's currently scheduled to drop a book in the fall. It's rumored but not confirmed that it will come out in September, right before the midterm elections. I guess rehashing 2024 and his presidency. So I have thoughts. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are Hunter does not bother me. He is a self-proclaimed addict, and I think that he humanizes addiction for a lot of people. I think he's funny, and I think all of his points are very valid. And we need more messengers on the left. I did not think it would be Hunter Biden clapping back at people. He had one that went exceptionally viral when a right-wing Twitter account said, "Hunter, are you sure those weren't your drugs found at the White House?" And he said, "Definitely not. I would never have left my drugs anywhere. And by the way, I don't like coke. I like crack." We wanted realness. We're getting it.
We
The
said
book,
we said authenticity.
we got it. And I watched the Candace interview and I watched him on Channel 5 News. He's humanizing addiction. I don't know. I actually think he's probably helping the Biden family image, honestly. And I appreciate that. The books, I'm sick of the presidential books, period. But it's what happens. And my question for you, assuming that Joe Biden is the book is coming out, right? It's just a matter of when, if it's before the midterms or after. Do you think it's better to come out before the midterms when people have kind of already decided who they're going to vote for? Or we know as political strategists, the minute after the midterm election ends, the presidential starts. So would it be worse for the book to come out later?
No, it's better. It's better after, because then it's like, oh, look at this Greek tragedy that we suffered through in 2024. Let's not do that again. Let's pick somebody good. That's great timing, actually. I think it will help us learn the right lessons, whether they're written in the book or we gain the lessons from what is not written in the book. That's fine with me. Pre-elections is so self-centered and
Yeah.
egomaniacal. I can't deal with that. If that ends up being when he decides to drop it for cash, that's so embarrassing. The Hunter stuff, I agree with. To me, sorry, but it reflects poorly on the Biden administration, mostly the senior leadership, that they hid Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
Clearly, he should have been doing this when he was getting called a crackhead by members of Congress on the floor of the House and Senate and whatever. He should have been allowed to speak. He was essentially hidden for 4 years in basements and whatever. I don't know where he was.
Basement
But
baby. Yeah.
we just let the rumors fly about the paintings and Burisma and the boards and the money and like all this stuff. And he was nowhere. He was nowhere. And now he's like unleashed. And to me, that's like, oh, that's yet another fuck up from senior Biden admin folks. You clearly should have let him loose on Twitter so that he could have responded in real time.
Yeah.
Imagine how different that would have gone.
Yeah, he's an extremely effective communicator. I appreciate seeing it. Did you meet him at the White House?
No, I've never met Hunter.
Oh, okay.
Were we there together?
He was at the Christmas party.
Hanukkah?
And,
Christmas, yeah.
And I saw him and I was like, "Hunter, I'm gonna need a photo."
Oh my gosh. Did you guys recreate stuff from the laptop or?
LOL. No, his no. No. But yeah, I've always thought that Hunter had it, the thing, right? The effective communication thing. And I'm like, great. And your point is very valid. I didn't think of it that way. He's a strong tool. Why didn't we take him out of the toolbox?
Totally.
Well, anyway, if you're a publisher, listen to Brian Derrick and maybe push that.
Push that fucking launch date. I also have to say that Hunter Biden being the 2028 nominee would be the funniest timeline.
That's not.
I know it's not, but I just have to. We live in literally the stupidest timeline, and it would be the funniest outcome if Hunter Biden was like a consensus candidate that pulled in all these people from the right who were like MAGA people burned by Trump's forever wars and super taxes and
And the
uh,
corruption.
the corruption and
And
stuff.
yeah,
And like it would just be funny. I just think it's funny.
to your point, though, whoever he endorses or puts his weight behind, it'll probably be very helpful for that candidate, assuming that they are a front runner. I'm asking you every week now to tell me who's a candidate that I should be more excited about that I might not have on my radar. So who is it this week?
I am going to highlight a Senate race, which I almost never do. So I'm going to take the opportunity because there's a really spicy, good one right now, and highlight Josh Turek, who's running for U.S. Senate in Iowa, which we don't think of as a winnable state, but he is a former state legislator who's incredibly popular in the state. He's on the ticket with Rob Sand, a Democrat who has won statewide office in Iowa before. And they together make a really effective duo that's sort of changing the landscape of Iowa. So still an uphill battle, still not considered like a top tier, quote unquote, U.S. Senate race. I especially highlight it because he just came out of a competitive primary and is therefore broke. And that's one of the most effective times that you can donate to a candidate is right when they come out of a primary. They need to staff up very quickly. The Republicans immediately start hitting them with all of this super PAC money and outside spending, trying to define them in the eyes of voters as too weak, too woke, whatever. And so they need money to get their message out quickly so voters hear them respond and hear from them. So it's a really effective time to be donating. Josh Turek on oath.vote. Find him, hit him up. He's a 10.0 on our impact score right now. And it's a good use of your $20, $50, $100, $2,000. Go do it.
What about $10?
Well, there's a limit. You can only give $3,500, but we'll take $3,500.
If someone wanted to give $10, like say they only had $10, like my coffee allowance.
I immediately thought you meant 10K.
No,
yeah, absolutely.
The working people of America.
Yes, $10 is welcome.
Great.
Should we send them off with a good vibe?
Yeah.
Something that's not crack cocaine?
I just want to reiterate the vibe of New York City is so amazing right now because of the Knicks. And I just want to acknowledge that for any New York listeners, whether or not you care about the Knicks or not. It does feel like the city has come together. It was an amazing vibe to see how many people booed Donald Trump at Game 3, who he then fell asleep at the game. So great. The World Cup to me is a great vibe, high energy, and out of Los Angeles, Spencer Pratt lost. The Republican reality TV star who lied through his teeth about his lived experience, save for the fact that his house did burn down in the Palisades fire. He lost. So the people of Los Angeles has spoken, and he and his crystals and his hummingbirds can move out of California. I'm pretty sure he said that if he lost, he was like, I'm out. So that's how much you love your state and your city, huh?
Yeah, it's a very Cuomo-esque vibe. Take your ball and go home. So sorry. I'm sorry that Democrats outnumber Republicans in California by 3-1 and that you're running against the values of the vast majority of voters. Sorry.
Turns out not a winning ticket.
And with that, we hope you guys have an awesome week. Thank you for listening. We will be back here next week. In the interim, make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, share. And if you've got a minute, leave a review. It's how new listeners find us.